We continue talking about Book 2 of Aristotle's Ethics. We pick up right where we left off. Aristotle says that it is in the nature of things to be destroyed by both defect and excess, but that things are preserved by the mean. Now, this is not just with respect to your character. This is with respect to your body. Too much exercise can harm you. Too little can harm you, but just the right amount is what preserves health. The same will go for mental health, Aristotle says. So, this is known as the doctrine of the mean. For instance, both fear and confidence, appetite, anger, pity, and pleasure and pain, all of these may be felt both too much and too little, and in both of those cases, not well. But to feel them at the right times, with reference to the right objects, towards the right people, and with the right motives, and in the right way. That is what is both intermediate and best, and that is characteristic of virtue. Similarly, with regard to actions, there is also excess, defect, and the intermediate. Now, virtue is concerned with passions and actions, in which excess is a form of failure, and so is defect, while the intermediate is praised and is a form of success. This is not to say that the mean is exactly between the two extremes. As we will see, sometimes virtue is closer to one extreme than the other. However, Aristotle says that men are only good in one way, but bad in many. And I think you'll see why here in just a second. Which means that there is only one true intermediate state between the two extremes, which is rightly called virtue, or excellence. Finally, by a mean between extremes, Aristotle is talking about a mean relative to us. This part's important. How humans across the globe arrive at the mean is identical. This is why it will be an objective basis for happiness. But precisely where the mean is can differ between individuals based on a person's individual circumstances or previous experiences. So while the mean is objective, the process by which we arrive at it, rational reflective consciousness, the precise spot will differ. That will become clear as we continue. So we're going to do a bunch of these different virtues today. What is bravery? Well, bravery is the rational mean between the irrational extremes of cowardice, which is too much fear, and rashness, which is too much confidence. So this is what it looks like. On the one end of the spectrum is the guy who's afraid of everything. Let's say there's a rattlesnake, but that it's in a cage or behind glass, and the guy walks in the room and screams. He would be feeling fear towards the right object, but at the wrong time. That's irrational. It's irrational to fear something that cannot harm you. So if you scream and run out of the room, your behavior stemmed from an irrational fear. And over time, your behaviors shape your character traits. So you are slowly becoming a coward. On the other end of the spectrum, you've got the irrational confidence. So let's say you're on a picnic in shorts and sandals and two rattlesnakes are charging you, and you think you're so awesome you can snatch them out of the air before they bite you. You're feeling confidence towards the wrong object at the wrong time, and you're demonstrating it in the wrong way. You're not brave, you're rash. That's a vice. These are both vices. Bravery is the virtue. Now, why is it called a mean? And why is it called a rational mean? Aristotle argues that you have to assess the situation that you're in. Is it a poisonous snake? How far away is it from you? Does it look aggressive? And what is the best way to remove yourself from the situation, should you choose to act? That only after reflecting upon those things can you balance fear and confidence in just the right amount. This is why it's a ratio. In your math classes, you learn a ratio as one line segment to another. Bravery is just the right spot between fear and confidence given the situation at hand. Okay. So can one act bravely without using rationality? And the answer is no, a resounding no for Aristotle. Because bravery is an action. It's the product of a series of actions, but those actions require rationality for you to balance out the right behavior for the situation that's in front of you. So one more example. Let's say you're driving down the highway and a spider drops down right in front of your face. You're feeling fear towards the right object at the right time, but you have to demonstrate that fear correctly for it to be brave. What happens if you just let go of the steering wheel and started clapping in front of your face? Is that brave? No, it's not brave. Because taking your hands off that steering wheel represents a much greater danger than whatever that spider is that's going to do to you. So you have to be able to think about it and then act, and then you act bravely. All right, so bravery is the result of a lot of actions that are themselves the result of reflective thoughts. One cannot act bravely without rationality, since the brave act is the act committed post-reflection. That is, after considering the situation, at what time you're feeling fear and confidence, in reference to what object, to what degree, and the like. Virtue of temperance. Temperance is the rational mean between insensibility, which is the irrational denial of pleasure, sort of like an abstinence, but not just with respect to sex, but with respect to all forms of pleasure, irrationally. And on the other end of the spectrum, what he calls self-indulgence, which is the irrational pursuit of pleasure, just for the sake of pursuing pleasure. So let's take alcohol, for example. Remember, whether or not you feel pleasure with respect to alcohol depends upon the situation. How much of it, for what reasons, in what way. So let's say that it's your 21st birthday and it's just one drink with a toast of champagne with friends to celebrate your birthday, and you say, no, I just want to not feel any pleasure because pleasure is evil. Aristotle says there's something strange about that. Pleasure is supposed to be experienced as part of happiness. People who deny pleasure for the sake of denying pleasure have an abnormal psychology, and so they're way down here on the end of the spectrum. On the other end of the spectrum, let's say it's Monday morning before work and you're drinking 5 beers to help you get through the day. You're supposed to experience pleasure, right? But at the right time, in the right amount, and in the right way, right? So there are right and wrong ways to do everything for Aristotle. And what you have to do is reflect. Use reflective consciousness to determine the situation. How much should I experience right now given the situation that's at hand? Remember, this can work for things like food too, like cheesecake. It's your birthday, you don't want any. Then you've got the other guy who's eating cheesecake by themselves in their room on Friday nights to forget how miserable they are. Then you've got the temperate person who eats a piece of cheesecake, with a fork at a restaurant with their friends to celebrate something. This is what Aristotle says. You have to use reflective consciousness to arrive at the proper balance between insensibility and self-indulgence. And that proper balance is temperance. Temperance is the result of temperate acts, which are themselves the result of rational consciousness. So can one act temperately without being rational? And the answer is no. One cannot act temperately without rationality, since the temperate act is committed post-reflection, after considering the situation. What time of day is it? What am I talking about? Cheesecake or alcohol? With what person? To what degree? And the like. This also works with sex, by the way, right? You have to ask yourself, am I doing it at the right time, for the right reasons, with the right people, to the right degree, and so on. So anything having to do with pleasure falls in the realm of temperance, and the goal is to do it well as the product of reflective consciousness. Now, wit is an interesting one. Wit is the rational mean between borousness, irrational defect in speech, and buffoonery, irrational excess in speech. So it's about learning to say the right thing at the right time to the right people and deliver it in the right way. People who never say anything interesting, they just lack speech skills altogether. communication skills, and there can be lots of reasons for that. Over time, they develop the quality of borousness. They just can't engage in a meaningful conversation with somebody. They lack communication skills. On the other end of the spectrum, you've got your crazy uncle who never says the right thing. He says something that would have been funny at a different situation, but like making stiff jokes at funerals or addict jokes at AA meetings. They could potentially be funny, but he said them at the wrong time or to the right people, or his delivery was a little bit too high. Aristotle calls this buffoonery. Neither of these are virtues. These are vices. They're irrational. Wit is the quality of using speech well in reference to what the situation calls for before you. Can one act wittily without rationality? The answer is no. Wit is the product of reflective consciousness, considering the situation. What time of day is it? Who are you talking to? What are you talking about? What is the best way to deliver the comment? Wit is a quality, as with temperance and bravery, that are transferable. If you develop these qualities, you don't just use them on job interviews. You use them on dates, you use them on Friday nights, Sunday mornings, and Monday afternoons. This is why Aristotle thinks that these qualities lead to happiness, because they're transferable qualities. Liberality, this has to do with money. Liberality is the rational mean between stinginess, which is an irrational hoarding of money, and profligacy, which is an irrational wasting of money. So remember, like with all things, it determines how much in reference to what object, at what times, and for what reasons. So let's say it's your daughter's wedding, and you're like, let's do it in the backyard and then take you to Friendly's or something. You would be spending money at the right time in reference to the right object, but in the wrong degree. On the other end of the spectrum, let's say it's Columbus Day and you cash in your retirement to throw a block party for your neighbors. Again, you would be spending money in reference to the right object at the right time, but again, in the wrong degree. That degree of money is not rational given a Columbus Day block party. The goal is to be liberal, which is to spend the right amount of money given the situation. Why are you spending it? How much do you have to spend? In what way are you spending it? Credit card, loan, or do you have cash? And the like. That after reflection, only then can you behave liberally. And over time, doing liberal acts translates into you becoming a person who possesses the quality of liberality. Can one act liberally without rationality? No. One cannot act liberally without rationality, since liberal acts are committed post-reflection, after thinking about the situation that's in front of you. What time in reference to what object, to what degree, and the like. One thing I want you to notice about these are that these virtues, only human beings can have them. Like with respect to bravery, animals can't be brave. They either run it up and put it in their mouth, or they run away. Rationality is required to be brave. You have to think about what it is you're about to put in your mouth before you know whether or not it was brave to put it in your mouth. That's the whole point here. These are human virtues, and they are arrived at by using rationality well, or by using your human self well. One more. What's called righteous indignation. This has to do with anger. Righteous indignation is the rational mean between pusillanimity and irascibility. So these are people who never feel anger, even though they should. So they feel anger, not enough anger at the object at the right time or any of that. They're too little. These are people who have anger issues. Their child drops an ice cream cone and they explode and go volcano. They experience anger at the wrong time in reference to the wrong object, and they certainly demonstrate in the wrong way. These are not virtues, folks. These represent irrational control of your behavior, and over time that results in you being not a good human. The goal is to behave righteously indignant, which is to learn to rationally control your experience of anger. Why am I experiencing it? In reference to what am I experiencing? How much of this should I feel? And what is the correct way to demonstrate that anger? These are all products of rationality. So you cannot act righteously indignant without rationality, since the righteously indignant act is committed post-reflection.